Welcome to a world where trust in government is evaporating faster than ever. Did you know that, according to a 2023 Gallup poll, only 23% of Americans say they trust their government? That's the lowest level since they started tracking this data over 50 years ago. It's not just the US, countries around the globe are facing a similar crisis. For example, a 2021 survey found that 71% of people in Brazil felt their government did not care about them. But why is this happening? How did we get to a point where citizens feel more distrust than ever before? With scandals, misinformation, and the overwhelming influence of big corporations, it seems that the average citizen is left in the dark. In this video, we will explore who's really running the country when the government loses its grip on trust. We'll dive into the shadowy figures behind the scenes, the impact of social media on public opinion, and the rise of ordinary citizens demanding change. Get ready to uncover shocking truths and discover how power is shifting in ways you never expected. Let's find out together. If nobody trusts the government, who's truly in control? Chapter 1: The Trust Crisis. How did we get here? Trust in governments around the world is plummeting. A 2021 survey from Edelman's Trust Barometer found that only 48% of people trust their government. That's nearly half of the population with serious doubts. But why? It's not one thing, it's years of scandals, corruption, and broken promises. Take Watergate in the US, which in the 1970s shattered public trust in the presidency. And it's not just in the West. Brazil saw massive protests in the 2010s over corruption, which led to the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff. Everywhere you look, governments have struggled to stay clean, and the public has taken notice. Trust doesn't break overnight. It erodes gradually. Think of the financial crisis of 2008. Banks collapsed, but governments bailed them out, leaving ordinary citizens feeling betrayed. To this day, many people wonder if governments serve the people, or just powerful elites. This feeling of betrayal is reinforced by tax loopholes, insider trading scandals, and growing income inequality. In her book The Confidence Trap, political scientist David Runciman talks about how democracy can survive crises but not without damage to trust. According to him, governments today survive by maintaining a delicate balance, constantly putting out fires but never regaining full trust. Chapter 2: Shadow Powers. Who's really in charge? So if trust in elected officials is so low, who's really calling the shots? Some believe it's the unelected, behind-the-scenes actors that actually hold the power. Let's talk about the influence of corporate lobbyists and big business. In the US, for example, corporate lobbying spending exceeded $3.5 billion in 2022. Major industries like pharmaceuticals, oil, and tech spend millions to shape policy, often getting what they want. It's no surprise people think companies like Amazon or Pfizer have more say than the average voter. Harvard professor Lawrence Lessig calls this phenomenon institutional corruption in his book Republic, Lost, where the system itself gets skewed by money and power. Then, there's the idea of the deep state. No, not the wild conspiracy theory about shadow governments, but the real power of bureaucrats and long-term civil servants. They're the ones who actually keep the wheels turning. In 2017, then-President Trump himself talked about how he felt restricted by the permanent government, people in place for decades, who don't come and go with elections. Think about it, politicians change every few years, but the staff in intelligence agencies, federal departments, and regulatory agencies stay in their positions. They may not be on TV, but they quietly run the show. The world sees it too. In the UK, journalist Peter Oborne described the hidden wiring of power in his book The Triumph of the Political Class, referring to how much of the decision-making happens away from the public eye. Chapter 3: Tech Titans and Billionaires, the New Political Powerhouses. While the trust in governments falters, a new set of players has entered the political arena: tech titans and billionaires. Companies like Facebook, Google, and Amazon are so big, they operate almost like countries themselves. In fact, Facebook, now Meta, had nearly 3 billion active users in 2023, which is more people than most nations. These companies don't just control online spaces, they influence politics in ways we've never seen before. Mark Zuckerberg spent $419 million during the 2020 US election on election-related infrastructure, a move that raised eyebrows across the political spectrum. Critics argue that big tech now wields more power than governments when it comes to shaping public opinion. Meanwhile, billionaire philanthropists are stepping into policy spaces where governments traditionally ruled. Bill Gates, through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, has funneled billions into global health initiatives, taking on roles that used to belong to international organizations. This blurring of lines between private wealth and public policy is reshaping power dynamics. In Winners Take All, author Anand Giridharadas argues that wealthy elites claim to fix the system while maintaining the very inequalities that give them power. The idea is, billionaires fund social initiatives, but often these initiatives align with their interests. It raises the question, can those with immense wealth and influence really solve the problems they help create? At the end of the day, it's not just governments steering the ship anymore. We're living in an era where power is shifting to corporate giants and the ultra-wealthy, sometimes more openly, sometimes in the background. If you find these insights intriguing, don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the world of politics and power. Chapter 4: Media Manipulation. Shaping public perception. When we think about who controls the country, we often overlook one of the biggest players, the media. Media organizations have always influenced politics, but today, that influence has taken on a whole new level. With the rise of social media platforms like Twitter, now X, Facebook, and YouTube, the lines between facts and opinions have blurred. According to Pew Research, over 53% of Americans get their news from social media, and that number keeps growing. This shift has created an ecosystem where algorithms, not editors, decide what people see. It's no longer about what's most important, it's about what's most clickable. The algorithms favor sensational content, which means news that makes you angry or emotional tends to rise to the top. In his book The Attention Merchants, Tim Wu argues that today's media isn't just reporting on events, it's shaping them. By controlling what we see, media platforms can create narratives that influence elections, policy decisions, and even public moods. Take the 2016 US presidential election as an example. Russian interference using fake social media accounts and targeted ads was estimated to have reached 126 million Facebook users. Media isn't just the middleman anymore, it's part of the game. And it's not just news platforms. Netflix, YouTube influencers, and even gaming communities contribute to shaping opinions. For example, in 2020, political commentary videos on YouTube racked up billions of views, influencing millions of voters worldwide. One of the biggest concerns is the rise of echo chambers. People are increasingly exposed to information that confirms their existing beliefs, creating bubbles where opposing views don't get through. This polarization has serious consequences for democracy. As Cass Sunstein writes in #Republic, the more people live in echo chambers, the harder it becomes to have a functioning democracy where different sides can find common ground. Chapter 5: Citizens' Revolt. Are the people taking over? While trust in traditional government may be low, something remarkable is happening. Ordinary citizens are starting to take matters into their own hands. Around the world, we're seeing a surge in grassroots movements challenging the status quo. Look at the rise of populist leaders like Donald Trump, Jair Bolsonaro, and movements like Brexit. These weren't top-down decisions made by political elites, they were driven by mass public frustration with the system. In fact, a study from the Harvard Kennedy School found that populism has grown by 60% globally in the last 2 decades. It's clear people want change, and they're willing to shake up the system to get it. One of the most fascinating developments in recent years is the rise of decentralized movements. Take the Yellow Vests in France, a leaderless protest group that emerged in 2018 to oppose fuel taxes but grew into a nationwide movement demanding more government accountability. The movement wasn't organized by traditional political parties, it was powered by ordinary people using social media to mobilize and coordinate. Technology has made it easier for grassroots movements to form and grow. Platforms like Twitter and WhatsApp allow activists to organize in real time. In 2020, the Black Lives Matter protests swept across the US and other countries, fueled by videos of police brutality going viral. In just a few days, millions of people were marching, pushing for systemic changes. In his book The End of Protest, Micah White argues that the future of activism won't be led by traditional political leaders. Instead, we're entering an era of crowd-led movements where ordinary people use the power of the internet to shape their futures. It's clear that governments can no longer ignore the power of citizens when they unite behind a cause. If you want to stay informed about these hidden dynamics in politics and how they affect your life, be sure to subscribe for more insightful content.